First of all, again, this is with almost any tropical fish. If you have a fish that has a mouth that's big enough that another fish will fit in, most likely it's going to eat that fish. That's just what it does in the wild. So there's a lot of fish that you want to avoid that are bigger fish that you don't want to put in there with guppies. You want to keep things that are the same size or smaller than guppies, and typically fish that are not typically aggressive fish, which are, you know, obviously like most cichlids. You don't want to keep in there with guppies. It's other community type fish like neons and cardinals and some tetras and things like that are really good take mates with it. But the thing that you do have to remember with the male guppies, because they have that long flowing tail, other fish will have a tendency to nip at those fins. So in any case, you can end up with any type of fish that will try to nip at their fins. Sometimes you just don't know. Fish have personality, so it's really hard to say this fish is perfect for it, because in some people's cases they've had trouble with it, and where other people said, well, I've had them there for years and they've been fine. So it's kind of an open-ended discussion. But that's really the main thing that you have to worry about, is the fish that'll try to eat them or the ones that are going to be nipping at their fins. Because again, we're talking about bringing stress upon the fish, and when you bring stress upon the fish, that brings on diseases that come along with it. Okay, so filtration. What type of filtration is best for the aquarium that you're putting in there for the guppies? Now, there's a bunch of different things that you can do, but you really need to be running some type of filtration. It's not a good idea just to take a guppy and put it in a fish bowl and not have any type of filtration, because the first thing is oxygenation. The oxygenation happens at the top of the water. So you want your water to be having some type of ripple effect almost all the time, whether or not that's just simply bubbling, where you got air into an air stone that's blowing up, that's causing bubbling at the top of the water, which is causing that reaction so that oxygen is constantly being brought back into the water. But you also want, first of all, you want something that's going to create the biological filtration that you want. That's going back to the idea of cycling. You want a place where that bacteria that takes care of the ammonia and the nitrite has a place to live. Now, of course, they're going to live all on the glass. They're microscopic. They're going to live on the driftwood that you may have in there, on the gravel that you may have in there. But you want to give them something that has a big surface area. So first of all, if you want to use a sponge, sponges are fantastic because sponges are so porous. It gives that bacteria tons and tons of places to live. Because the way that sponge acts, it acts as a biological and a mechanical filtration. The mechanical filtration is the way that you're removing some of the thicker particles or heavier particles that are in the water. So as the bubbles are coming up through the sponge, it's causing a suction process on the sponge. So it's pulling in the water, pushing it out, and it's just a constant flow back and forth. And so that sponge is going to act as the mechanical filtration to pull that stuff out. But it's going to require you to clean that sponge off every once in a while. But let me tell you, whenever you do clean those sponges, don't take those sponges and go clean them in your tap water, because you're going to end up killing all your bacteria by putting the chloramines in it. The best thing to do is, when you're doing a water change, take some of the water out of the tank, put it in like a 5-gallon bucket, take the sponge out and put it back into the tank water that's in the 5-gallon bucket, so it never actually leaves the water that it's in, and squeegee and squish it out and try to get as much of that junk you can out into that water so that you can put the sponge back in. You're not trying to get it perfectly clean, you're just trying to get all that stuff that's clogging it up, because what'll happen is that sponge will suck so much stuff in, the outside of that sponge will literally become rigid and hard, and nothing else can get into it. So you need to make sure you pay attention to that, because I had one aquarium that it started getting to the point where there were just particles in the water all the time, and I couldn't figure it out, and I reached in there and touched one of my sponges, and it was just hard, and that's what it was. Once I cleaned it up, it began to clean all that water up. So another one that you can use is hang on the back filters. Those are sucking water into them, and then running them through some type of media to clean the water. And also that media typically has something in it that is also giving that bacteria a place to grow. A place to grow, Jason, not glow, grow. A place to grow. And then it's also it's stopping any of the big particles to going through also. so that you simply can remove whatever that media that you have in there is to knock out all the junk and then put it back in there. But again, you need to be careful that if you're running one of those like that and you're replacing the what are those things called? The media that they use inside of those. When you're replacing that, you got to remember there's tons and tons of bacteria that's built up on that. So if you completely remove that thing and put a brand new one in, you may be removing almost all of the bacteria, and you may get some ammonia spikes that are in there. So if there's 2 of them that are in there, replace one and then like alternate them, like where you're doing this one every month and then you're doing this one every other month. So you're replacing them at different times, so you're not worrying about causing any type of ammonia or nitrite spikes into your tank. And then the old school way, using an undergravel filter. Yeah, I've still seen some of these for sale in places and seen them in some of the fish auctions also. That's another way to filter your tank. Lighting. Now, guppies don't have to have lighting to survive, but again, you're trying to create something that's kind of natural for it. So the idea of running lights for it, 8 to 12 hours a day, whatever you might want to run it, it creates a day and nighttime for the fish from what he's used to. If you keep him in the light all the time, it might stress him because he never sees any dark and he doesn't know, he doesn't understand the difference between when a day starts and when a day ends. So lighting is not necessarily anything that's beneficial, except for the fact that it creates an understanding of day and night for it. So when you get guppies, if you're buying ones that are have already got the males have already got their tails, then they've already reached maturity. Typically, guppies, females usually reach maturity a little earlier than males. Some females will reach maturity at about 2 months, where it's about 6 weeks sometimes for males. And when I say maturity, that means they have the ability to breed at that time. So even though the males may still only have a tiny fin, they still have the ability to breed. So if you buy a female at a pet store and it's in a tank with a male, it's going to be pregnant. It's just like, there's no ifs, ands, or buts. It's going to be pregnant. If it's mature and it's been around a mature male, it's going to be pregnant. That's just how guppies are. So don't be surprised when you bring guppies home and you put it in your tank and 15 days later you have babies all of a sudden. You may not know who the father is. That may be a surprise, but you're most likely going to have babies. And last but not least, how long do guppies live? I've heard people that have had guppies for 5 years, but it seems to be the average time that a typical guppy can live is about 2 years. But the way that you can allow your guppies to live longer is, first of all, is taking good care of them, is doing regular water changes. One of the things that we didn't talk about is, so when you have the bacteria cycle that we talked about before, where you've got the fish waste that gets converted into, that's ammonia, that gets converted into nitrite, that gets converted into nitrate. Well, that nitrate, it being the final piece, nitrate is not really harmful to fish until it builds up to a large amount. And when it builds up to a large amount, it then can begin to stress the fish out. So you have to have a way to get rid of that nitrate. Now, if you have a bunch of plants in your tank, they'll absorb and they'll use that nitrate. But sometimes they can't even keep up with the production. Again, it depends on how many fish there are. So here's where water changes come in and are so important. The water changes are allowing you to remove some of that nitrate and putting some fresh water in. But again, whenever you do that water change, you need to be sure that you're using water that's been dechlorinated, again with Prime or Safe or one of the other ones that are out there, so that you're not having to worry about that you're putting that poison back in. Because believe me, I've done it before. I've accidentally forgot to put Prime in some of the water that I put into the tank, and did poison and kill my fish, because it's where I live at, we have chloramines, and chloramines, like some people have chlorine in their water, and chlorine will actually evaporate out of water after a few days, so you can age your water. Chloramines will not. It doesn't matter how long you keep water in there, those chloramines are going to stay in there. You've got to find a way to get them locked up. Okay, so again, life of a guppy, typically about 2 years, but if you have males and females together, that age is going to continue to lower, because every time that female has babies, it is hard on her body. And you're not going to be very surprised that when you have a guppy that has babies and then she dies, because it's so difficult on her. So the more that she has babies, the shorter her lifespan is going to get. And females have the ability, after they've mated one time, they have the ability to store that sperm for a very long time. I hear arguments back and forth on they store it forever, or they store it for a year, or the next 2 times, whatever it might be. They have the ability to store that sperm and to continue to give birth. So once they've got around males, it's going to reduce the amount of time that they can live. All right, so I hope I've helped you guys out. I hope I've maybe taught you a little something new about how to keep guppies. If you guys have got anything that you currently do that I didn't touch on, I'd love for you guys to leave the comments down below. If you got any questions, be sure and leave those comments for me also. Thanks again, guys, and God bless.